Cheik, welcome to the channel. I'm really excited to have you on. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you so much, Dimitri, for having me. Very, very excited to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Why don't you just give our viewers, kind of as the podcaster, a little bit of an introduction of like who you are and what you're currently working on, just a real brief one, and then we can dive into your journey and get back into like education and kind of walk through that process.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm currently based in New York City, and I'm actually working. I founded a company called Sabr Research, and I have a co-founder as well. And what we're trying to solve is essentially better decision making by scaling it. So we started by first looking into the financial sector because I have some background in that, and we then discovered that actually what we're working on could be expanded to other industries as well. So I would say we're basically a team of scientists trying to solve like a business problem. Yeah, and so yeah, that's how I would define Saber Research.
So where did you grow up, like in high school and elementary school? And like what was your goals at that stage? Like what were you, thinking about kind of at a younger age?
Oh yeah, it's actually a very, I would say, long story. So I'm actually from Senegal, West Africa. I don't know if you're familiar with that part of the world. And so essentially, Senegal is like we speak Wolof there, but also French, as it was a former French colony. And so essentially, when I was in high school, I was very interested in mathematics and physics. And I would say a big thing I was very interested in was like competitions, like math competitions, physics competitions. And that's actually what, because essentially at some point I discovered that, you don't know anything by just learning the traditional curriculum. You have very more exciting stuff out there. And that's very slowly how I started being interested like in competitive mathematics, competitive physics, and decided to go to France to continue my studies. So in France, the curriculum there after high school, you have what they call classe préparatoire, which is
Okay.
essentially prep school for engineering school. Uh, yeah, so it's basically 2 or 3 years of intense science training. By science, I mean mathematics, physics, and computer science. Sometimes you also have chemistry. And I did it because my dad did that in the 80s. And he was basically, when I was a kid, he was talking about prep school, prep school. So, in my mind, it was the natural next step after high school.
Okay.
I didn't even overthink. I was like, okay, I got my high school diploma and I continue my studies there. And yeah, so essentially you get just training for a national math competition. And I believe that's also similar to what they have in China, India. And so basically you have like linear algebra, you have real analysis, calculus, all of these things, and you learn theorems, how to prove uh, how to solve problems using these theorems, basically having the pure mathematics knowledge, right? And at the end, you have a written exam, but also a oral exam.
Okay.
And basically, this is quite good because it teaches you how to solve problems, right? Essentially, I remember the oral exam. So I went to the school called École Polytechnique, which is, I believe, based on the latest ranking, the leading engineering school in France. So it's very competitive. So essentially, you are in a room and you have a mathematician asking you a very hard question, and you just have the chalk and the white or blackboard, and you have to try to find a solution to the problem. And it's actually very hard. It requires like years of preparation to succeed to that. And that's why actually the French engineering schools are well known to have like good training, good mathematicians, good scientists. And at the end of the day, I would say the number one skill that these French students have is like a strong theoretical knowledge. And that's why also I think we're going to talk about it, but France is also known to be a pipeline for quants, especially in London, in the city. You have a master program called El Karoui, which is probability and finance, and it's essentially stochastic differential equation. And the French kids love it. They love writing papers on that, how to solve this problem. problems. And so they would go on the sell side and for banks, yeah, to try to solve these things. And I was purely, I would say, interested by the math behind it.
Yeah, a lot of French students ended up getting recruited by Columbia, and Columbia had a very interesting pipeline, and that kind of piqued my interest. And then I started going down that rabbit hole as well. Like, why are there so many French students at this program? And then I started looking into. I was like, oh, there's actually a really strong mathematics culture in France as well, and that is translated, yeah,
Yeah.
into London and New York and a few other financial hubs as well. When you graduated, I guess from your undergrad, did you have any idea what you wanted to do, or like how did you pivot at that point of like, now I have to work, or now am I going to grad school? Like, what was that thought process like?
Yeah, that's actually a great question. So I had many friends who wanted to do a PhD, and I was not very convinced by the necessity of having a PhD to solve real life problems. And I remember, like, I think it was like in 2017, we had a conference. It was a senior quant in a bank in London who came to the school to talk about the quant job. And I was like, oh, wow, I'm very interested in what these guys are doing because essentially they still do science and there is like a quick turnaround between research and results, right? So that's why I knew I wanted to be a quant actually. And that's why actually I went to do the Master of Financial Mathematics from MIT
So
because, uh, yeah, go ahead.
yeah, so how this is an interesting point. How do you feel? Because you mentioned pure math has been very beneficial on like your logic, your thinking, and your problem solving skills. And yet quantitative finance is often very applied. And I think it's interesting you're like, I don't want to go through the PhD route because it's not like applied enough. What like do you feel like those pure
Yeah.
skills are really that key of like the problem solving? Because I also have that struggle of trying to explain to people like should you seek out applied math or pure math? Like what do you think is like an advantage of pure versus applied in kind of this setting?
Yeah, that's actually very interesting because, like, French students are known to be good at the theory, but lacking maybe skills in the practice side compared to other like the Americans, for example. I think personally, the theory is the foundation needed to go to the applied side. Because I'm not like for doing theory for just the purpose of doing cool math and seeing no applications. I see it more like as a foundational skill actually to have being able to understand why this tool can be used, why this algorithm works, and I think it's very important at the end of the day. And I remember, like when I was in undergrad in France, we had actually three tracks. We had the pure math, the applied math, and the physics. And I started with the pure math, and I found it actually very hard in terms of like I didn't see why we were doing all of these like hard math, for. And actually, I fell in love with the applied math track. We had like I think a 6 months curriculum where you decide after these 6 months, and I was even I would say hesitating between physics and applied math, and I went to applied math. So yeah, so I would say personally, I think at least that's my understanding of this. You need like solid theoretical skills before like going into the applied science because like you can't just come and I mean especially today it's very easy to use tools that are already designed, but I think you would
Yes.
have an edge by understanding how these tools work, right? So that's something that would be a big advice for me to students. Yeah.
Is there a specific class, like if you had to recommend a class to like an undergraduate student who's taking math, is there one class that really stands out as like it's a pure math class that would actually really help you as you kind of build out those skills?
Yeah, that's yeah, so actually, like, it's sequential, right? Like usually you need some classes to go to other to you need to have some understanding, some solid understanding of some uh like theoretical aspect of some course before actually tackling that course. And that's also something I found like very common, like to students who struggle like in like let's say homeworks because there are like some theoretical aspects they never learn actually. So yeah, so I think everything. So differential equations is something like stochastic differential equation is something like to me very important because like you have the theory aspect, like for example, why this equation can be solved, why the algorithm converge and once you have that, then you can also build a project on top of it because you can, let's say, simulate a trajectory of like a meteorite or something like that, right? So you could very easily go from the theory to the practice. So I remember like my favorite classes were classes where it starts with a very solid theory aspect of it, and then you have a project that would be using this theory. And personally, I found that approach much better.
And so then back to the grad school, what was the decision process, I guess, for going for the master's and MIT specifically?
You said the process from for the masters MIT?
Yeah, like what was the decision process? Like what were you thinking about like, as we started out, you mentioned like you wanted a master's because it'd be more applied versus a PhD. I mean, what were you thinking through
Yeah,
that process and like why MIT? I always, to my shock and surprise, I've been following the quant programs for a long time. MIT only came on my radar a few years ago as a
yeah.
quant program, and then I look at historically, and it's been around for a long time. This isn't like a new program.
Yeah, I think it's since 2008. I think like it started when I was in France, obviously, before coming to the US. Like I saw like everyone was essentially talking about the traditional like master program in France, like the El Karoui master program, like which is a pipeline for quants, right? And personally, I'm usually not very attracted by like mainstream paths, ideas. That's like okay, everyone is doing this. I don't do that was the very fighting that I wanted to go to the US to do a master program instead of staying in France. And the second step, obviously, also was uh, I was only, I would say not only, but mainly interested by the buy side, right? So only
Okay.
interested by doing research that is applied in the financial sector. So not quite interested in the finance aspect of it, but just like using the applied mathematics tools available to actually solve problems in finance, in investing, trading, whatever. And so that's why, and the French program is usually for the sell side. So you build these derivative contracts, these complex derivative contracts that, used by banks, trading desk, whatever. So that's why I was like, okay, I want to be a quantitative researcher to be more precise. And I saw that the MIT program had that, and of course, like it's true that the master, the financial master at the MIT is in the business school, but you also have you are able to take classes from the Operation Research Center, also from other departments, and it's MIT at the end of the day, right? So which is very appealing for anyone doing science. So yeah, I think that was the combination of these two that made me choose it.
What do you think is the advantage of MIT in that? Is it just a nice, close alumni network? Or what's kind of the advantage point of like the MIT program and kind of MIT overall kind of atmosphere?
Yeah, I think like the diversity was very helpful. It was very striking to me. Like I think there was like 40 something nationalities in the campus. So, when you meet that diverse you have this type of diversity, it creates bonds, So I made some very good friends and I think that that's probably for me one of the main thing into being connected, having a strong connection in the alumni network, and obviously, like MIT, I think most of the programs do it as well. They have like alumni meetings every other years, so that's also very helpful. And Boston is already like when you come, you definitely you have like or asset managers that are in the Boston area, and this create like a very early connection with people who went in the program like 5, 10 years ago, and I think that's very helpful in that case.
And how is your experience, I guess, from that point, going from grad school through the application process of trying to find a job on that outlook?
Obviously, it was hard, right? Like it's very competitive to find a job. Like everyone is competing, against each other. So I remember two priorities when I was applying. In that time, I was also doing research projects. So I was very heavy on like being a research assistant, doing research projects, And by the way, this can be used like as experience when you apply to these firms. And yeah, so I took the preparation very seriously. I remember like I applied to different firms, and I ended up at Five Rings. And I'm sure your audience know that firm, given the context of the channel. So what I like at Five Rings was that the interviewing process was very research oriented. So you have very difficult problems and you try to solve it. You have 1 hour to solve it. So, as someone who likes problem solving, that was very appealing to me. And in the contrary, you have other firms that would basically ask you like brain teasers or quick math questions, mental math questions, and I don't find that very interesting because like usually people come, they learn like these answers by heart or like the methods by heart, and so the more you do it, the better you will be. And the other one, like the research style, is more like testing your problem solving skills. And if you like it, then that's good. And I actually enjoy the interview process. I was very happy going to these interviews. Like usually people are like stressed when they are getting interviewed by these firms, but it was actually a very happy time for me because I was like, oh, this is a very interesting problems. And also that's something I would give as an advice to students applying. Like maybe like try to know what are your strengths and then find a job that's consistent with that. Like, for example, if you are someone who, like me, who wants to take his or her time to think about a problem, then maybe being a quant trader is not the right track because like quant traders usually they have to think very fast. And yeah, so it's more like finding the fit based on who you are, what's your background, and then it would be a much more fun experience.
It's great to hear that the interview process at Five Rings is much more reasonable. So I will tell you, a lot of people, myself included, have no interest in going on the buy side because you hear all these like stories of like the ridiculous IQ tests you have to take to get the first interview.
Yeah.
And then everyone always asks me, they go, Dimitri, I want to end up on the buy side. What do you recommend? And I'm like, buy the green book and the red book and then memorize the problems because
Yeah.
learning that process of problem solving will get you through the interviews. So it's nice to see there are
Yes.
firms that are focusing more on the quality of the process and that people are actually enjoying the interview. Like I always hope like good candidates enjoy the process, right? It's not like a rite of passage to suffer through it. It's more like I really
Yes.
want to work here. Like the people are interesting and they're nice and the work seems challenging in itself. So a lot of my listeners come from different areas, whether they're on the buy side, the sell side, students. Can you share a little bit about like what are the skills used in the research process when you worked there? Was it math, stats, programming? Like what was kind of the focus and the process and what were the skills that were really desired for those sorts of roles?
Yeah, absolutely. So, to be honest, like the background of the quants I worked with was quite diverse. Like you have statistics, computer science, you have pure mathematicians as well, and physicists. And I enjoy working with the physicists as well. Like I feel like the physicists were very good at what they were doing because it's very similar, right, in terms of the type of skill needed. But obviously, like you also have many quants coming from the MFE program from Colombia, and they're very good at what they were doing as well. So I think obviously just having a finance background is not enough. Like you need to have like some scientific background, like and obviously if you want to do finance on top of it, that's good, right? That's great, but it's not needed. And yeah, so I think like in terms of skills, the number one skill would be being independent. Like it's funny because full time at Five Rings, like I was able to mentor some interns, and one of the main characteristic that Five Rings was looking for from the interns is like the capacity of being independent. Like usually, they would give you a problem that's sometimes not even very clear, and you have to be comfortable with that. Like some people they just want to ask questions whenever there is something unclear, but yeah, but what they want is more like someone who is willing to, okay, I have little information. Let me think about this. How can I solve this problem? So I remember like when I was working through my projects, most of the time like it's very vague. Like you have to solve and find a new tool, design a new tool, but sometimes you don't really know why do we need this tool if we have the other one? So basically, you have to teach yourself to be comfortable like with this type of scenario, having little information and trying to select. If you could do that, then you would succeed very, very easily.
And what sort of like I guess sciencey and math skills were used? Did you guys use a lot of statistical modeling? Like econometrics, time series, linear regression?
Yeah, a mix of everything. It's probability theory, time series analysis, depending on the type of product you are working on, type of project. Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the skills I've realized is working through the industry is a lot of people underplay like the importance of statistical modeling. I think too many students go through like a grad program and they take like an off-the-shelf model. Like Black-Scholes is like the perfect example. Everyone thinks like you take the Black-Scholes model and you just put it on your computer and
Yeah.
then the data goes. And I'm like you got to calibrate as one of it, and then often things don't work. So then you have like volatility models, which are just statistical or mathematical models. So having understanding of the markets, statistics,
Yeah.
theory, and then putting all the pieces together is always like a challenging piece. But I think so many students, I don't know, they get in their heads like there's this magical tool that's being used, and I'm like, guys, it's math and stats. Like it's the core
Yeah.
tools we're all using in the science kind of space as well.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's come back to what I was thinking about earlier during our talk, which is I think to be a good quant, a good scientist, you at least need to have a good theoretical foundation, right? You can't just afford then to be a user, right, of these tools, but also understanding how they work.
How do you see the industry shaping up? So I have a very pessimistic view on it, but I always feel like, in my eyes, similar to what you're talking about, like I feel like quants should be scientists first and foremost. We're not business people. We're not marketing experts. Like you hire us to be a scientist. You have a problem.
Yeah.
You create a hypothesis. Like there's a problem that needs to get solved. You have a hypothesis how you're going to solve it, and then you go through like that research process of figuring it out. Do you feel like that's still embraced, or do you feel like that's starting to kind of fall away? Or, I mean, how do you see that kind of shaping, I guess, through the industry, or maybe how has this impacted kind of how you guys started a business, or maybe there's a problem or something you're trying to solve with that?
Essentially, I think like I think like the quants are could be compared to scientists in the tech industry, right? In terms of the type of problems they solve. And like, me personally, as a quant, I was having my roommate actually was a scientist from Amazon, and so I was talking to him a lot about the type of problems he's solving there, and I found it very, very interesting in terms of like um, the type of models they're working on, the type of data sets they have access to. And I think in finance, like people are really reluctant to change, to innovation, especially with like AI booming, and like it's like there's a lot of gatekeeping in traditional finance, but also in more technical quant-driven funds. And one of the reasons also why I decided to start a company was I saw the use of AI in finance in general, like in many firms. I have friends who work for other asset management firms. I feel like it's very, very basic. Like most of the tools used are only for like, let's say, summarizing news or writing reports, but nothing very, I would say, high ceiling or very active, like actually making decisions. And I think like the financial sector would have to realize that if they don't like embrace these new technologies, they're gonna fall behind. So I see the main challenge more in terms of like philosophical challenge. Like people in the financial sector, they usually think that their way of doing things is the best way. And yeah,
I can
so
relate
it's
with that. Oh yeah, yeah.
yeah. So it's really hard for them to, like to adopt new changes, like new models, like using first principle thinking. Yeah, because like there is no lack of talents. Like you have like math Olympiads, like being quants, like all these like scientists working for these tech firms. But I think even the banks is even like a step behind. Like usually banks see machine learning scientist as like a tech support job, which is very surprising to me. And yeah, so I think like the financial sector is like isn't like willing to embrace these new technologies. I think whenever like there is like money involved or like people doing things that work for like the last 20 years, they don't want to change that, right? They want to keep doing the same thing over and over again. So, and that's good because I mean that's bad, but somehow that's good for newcomers, for entrepreneurs and all of these startups. And so yeah, that was also one of the reasons why I decided to explore the use of AI first in the financial sector, but also in other sectors as well.
Do you think there's an, I guess, a hurdle or an advantage of being small versus large?
Yeah, I think like currently there is big advantage of being small actually because if you are already established, having systems already in place, it's probably very costly to change everything because you found new ways of doing things. So I think like AI is all these new models, these systems are a big equalizer between these small firms and these big ones. So the first one to embrace this technology would definitely have a big advantage, no matter what their size is. And it's funny that even in 2025, 2026, like these firms are like very reluctant to be aggressive in their implementation of AI, you know. They're still using it as a very basic like summarizing tool, like low ceiling tool essentially. So I would definitely think like being small is advantageous in this.
And what was, I guess, segueing into this, because your company Saber focuses on new technologies, including AI. What was the thought process of leaving Five Rings? Like it's a well-established company, right? You don't have to deal with all the headaches of starting a company and managing employees and doing that full process. What was kind of
Yeah.
your thought process on why did you leave? And like what were the things that you kind of weighed on that decision?
I mean, I love my job when I was at Five Rings, you know, in terms of the colleagues, like the work I was doing. But you know, I had these discussions with my co-founder, who is a scientist in the tech industry, and I more and more find it very interesting what what are the problems that these guys are solving, and that was more like a curiosity on my side. Okay, I was like, I think I want to, you know, embrace this new wave of models that are being used to solve exciting problems. You know, like all these quant firms, like they pay well. Like usually, like they pay interns like very high salary. But I think if you just go there because of the money, then I don't think that's the idea. I think a quant at the end of the day, the role would be to solve exciting problems, you know. And I think at this stage of where we are in the technology landscape, the most exciting problems are in the AI sector, using AI to solve any type of problems. And um, so yeah, it was more like a scientific curiosity on my side, and I would say I'm someone who I'm a risk taker. You know, like I think like if you're comfortable in what you're doing, you're not going to grow. You know, scientifically speaking, but also as a person. So I think it's something that I enjoy doing, like enjoying this type of risk, you know, type of like a new adventure. Yeah, so I think that was the thought process. Yeah.
And why don't you talk about like what is Saber? Like what was the idea, the spark, that curiosity piece that kind of drove you guys to create this company?
So essentially, the very first, I mean, the very first discussions we had was, you know, the financial firms, like the hedge funds, trading firms, they should be very worried if, not if there's like a new renaissance or a new firm using AI, but they should be worried if, like, let's say Google tomorrow comes and say, "Hey, I'm gonna open a hedge fund," you know, because now you know you have models that are able to do reasoning to make decisions in some instances better than humans and so that was like the first operation of the discussion I had with my co-founder, which is actually the most interesting of the interesting application of AI is not just for board of, but actually to the decision could be like buying a stock or you know investing in a company if you let's say a private equity investor or all of these things. So we wanted to create, so we created Saber as a research company that's basically exploring how AI could be used to make these type of decisions in the financial sector. And by decision, what we mean is investing, right? Like if you want to buy a stock or buy an asset, why did you do it? Based on what information? And we feel like it's still like, I mean, it's still discretionary in most of these firms, and we think that AI would be very helpful to augment these decisions in the financial sector. And me personally, I was very impressed when I saw these LLMs, these new AI models able to reason almost better than humans in some cases. And it was a no-brainer to me. Like, it's like, okay, there is something to be done, especially in the financial sector. And so what Saber is doing is essentially building AI systems for decision making. And first, we decided to focus on the financial sector because that was my background. So we had a lot of discussions with real estate investors, private equity investors, VC as well. And this was like the first 6 months of the company, which was just talking to these people, see what they do, how they make decisions at the end of the day. And in one end of the spectrum, you have people they make decisions with no data. It's basically they think like they know something that they can't even explain, and that they will make the right decision. But in the other end of the spectrum, you have more data-driven people like writing on Excel sheet, like factors, parameters that they use to make financial decisions, right? And so we were more interested in this type of managers, investors, and our goal is to essentially replace, not replacing, but learning their decision-making framework and using it to scale their decision essentially. So that's our first use case of a product we are working on at Saber.
Okay, so let me ask some questions here regarding my understanding of like LLMs in the AI space. I always view LLMs as it converges to the average, right? So it often makes the worst people better. And the perfect example I give is like me creating thumbnails for YouTube. I'm not an artist. Like I like to sit and do math and stuff. I'm not going to sit and figure out how to make a thumbnail everyone's going to click on. And LLMs make me much better at it because it can generate the imagery and the processing and do that thought process and bring up an image faster. But I often find it's not competitive with the top of the top. And so even like in quant research, we tend to see newer ideas that aren't going to be the same old tools LLMs are using as information or processing. And kind of to your point, right, a lot of it's gate capped anyways. So a lot of it's not public information. The tech companies can steal all the information on the internet they want, but there's no way to train off of it because most of it in hedge funds and banks, I think, is very, very, I guess, kept secret. So I guess what you're saying too is like you're looking at like a discretionary fund. So not the quant funds, but those that are essentially on the average or below the average, looking to increase efficiencies, but then also perhaps bring up the skill level. Is that kind of like
Yep.
the business is looking at how you add that technology? Because I can relate with you. I've talked to a lot of firms. I'm like, you guys don't have data and you don't have a full
Yeah.
process and team to do this. And it's like, well, no, this
Yeah,
guy's an expert. He's been doing it for 30 years. So it's
exactly.
interesting to see that. So that, I mean, that clarify, that's right. What you guys are doing is trying to get kind of advances and bring a lot of those companies and firms into a more competitive kind of framework.
Yeah, that's correct. So I think like at this stage we're not yet at the stage where we have models that are competitive compared to like the best deal makers or decision makers. But however, like we think the best use case of AI at this stage in terms of decision making is not replacing people like all these decision makers, but actually augmenting their decision. So, like a very simple use case is, let's say you are an analyst, you are very good at analyzing stocks, right? And from your analysis, like your fund will make investment decisions, then you can probably make it for 5, 10 stocks, but can you make it for 500 stocks, like 1,000 stocks, right? So we think AI is a very good use case in that scenario. So one aspect is learning from the experts and replicating that basically, right? So that you can scale the decisions. And that's quite interesting because you don't want to standardize the decisions across companies because you're going to dilute the alpha, you know, dilute the knowledge, and the firms won't accept it anyway. They don't want to have their knowledge being trained by models and used by other firms. So we think that the most interesting use case is like having an LLM or a tool like a foundation model that's learning from your own decisions, and then that could be used to scale your decisions. So scaling decisions is the first cool application of AI, because if you can make the same analysis, the same level of analysis on much wider universe of stocks, then ultimately you're going to be a winner, right? So it's not the fantasy of replacing these people, like at least not at this stage, you know. Yeah.
Yeah. Are you guys using like agentic AI where you have agents that are trained for each specific, I guess, job or process, and then trying to work that as a bigger system to kind of bring the pieces in? Or like, how are you guys thinking about the structure and design of the AI?
Yeah, it's a part of it actually. Like agentic AI is like a big part of it, but we what we call it is AI systems. So we have different parts. Some of it are using our agents, right? But you have different parts that could be much simpler tools. Let's say you have like n outputs, right? X1, X2, Xn. Then you could even do a simple like a regression model from these outputs and to predict another output, and then use that as a secondary input, right, for another
Yeah.
model. So it's yeah. I'm not personally for like as for example, like you have some firms who think that you could just ask the LLMs like, what should I buy tomorrow, right? What stock? But we don't think that would work, right?
Yeah.
But however, if you have a system that you design that's have different stages analyzing different data, and then inside this whole system you could have traditional machine learning models, right? That could use these inputs and provide other outputs, and then use that and feed it to an LLM agent, for example. So yeah, that's our philosophy in the technology aspect.
How are you guys able to handle, or have you thought about issues with model versioning? So one of the things as a scientist and a statistician, more so than anything, the thing that scares me the most is that we have kind of this fallacy that we think LLM models are going to get better and better and better, like it's linear. But clearly with ChatGPT, like we saw version 4 was great for what some use cases, and then version 5 was awful in many things. And then they
Mm.
removed version 4, so now you're stuck on version 5. Do you guys have a concern, I guess, as a company building off these platforms? Like, how do you handle versioning, especially if a version goes away? And how do you, I don't know, I just feel like this is like a huge risk on a financial side of like, how do you control all these pieces? Because really, you're not building the underlying piece of it, you're building this entire infrastructure on top. How do you guys go
Yeah.
about handling that, or do you guys worry about that, or what's kind of the thought on that?
Yeah, I think it's obviously a big issue, right? If a version changed, but you have open source models, or you have multiple mechanisms like fallback methods if issue happens, like that one. But I think like you should not rely only on one model. By diversifying, like using multiple models at once, then you could alleviate this type of issue.
So essentially, you'll have to have a more complex infrastructure to handle multiple model inputs from different
Correct.
servers.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Not just focusing on one LLMs and then something new happen. No, it's more like using multiple systems, multiple LLMs, and then yeah, if one change happens, we hope that it would be not big, right, in the entire system, decision making system.
Have you guys thought about two failure points or cost rising? So one of the things I've been kind of concerned about being in the finance side is every company doing it right now is hemorrhaging money. There's not one company that's been successful at doing this on the big players that are actually building out these LLMs. I'm thinking in the long run, they're going to have to raise costs somehow, especially when energy demands increase as we're starting to build more and more data centers and energy consumption, like in Texas where I'm at. Are you guys prepared to see some fallout, or do you just think the costs are going to essentially keep rising with the cost of doing these as adaptation increases? Or like, what's the backup plan around that?
Yeah, I think like obviously, when you are like early stage tech company, obviously we don't have the resources to like train a model, and I was it's much more expensive, right, to
Yeah.
build your own LLM, like train all of this. So using this like uh these models already pre-trained model, foundation model is a big advantage. So yeah, we expect to see the cost increase, but at the same time, I think the performance of these models will increase as well, right? Otherwise, there would be a problem. So I
What,
think it's going to be like yeah, go ahead.
why do you think the performance is going to increase? I'm very pessimistic on this. I watch I watch these tech people say, we have great models.
Yeah.
And then they say, oh, we now have specialized models. I'm like, it's called segmentation and statistics. So you're doing segmented models, but it's getting worse. I don't see, I guess I'm very pessimistic on the view of I don't see that where the advances are, at least on this. I think like they've hit some sort of roadblock, it seems like.
Very optimistic on the science aspect. I think like I believe in science at the end of the day. Um, I see like magic happening like when you have a team of like world-class scientists working together. So I see like people designing better like better algorithms, better models. So yeah, I think it's just like an optimistic view on my side. But
Okay.
yeah, I see that you have. I mean, to be honest, like you have conflicting views on this, right? You have some tech entrepreneurs saying like there's not enough data on the internet to keep scaling these LLMs, but you also see other people. So nothing is certain for sure, but I put personally my bet on the science. Like for example, I have a friend of mine who's working on how to get better performance with the same amount of data, like for a given model. Let's say it's limited, then how you would increase your performance. What should change essentially in the model, and I think like you would have more and more papers like this that would give ideas to scientists, and yeah, ultimately I'm a big believer in science advances, and I think there is no reason why it would stop at this stage.
Interesting. I talked to a guy from OpenAI and he said it feels like they're throwing mud at the wall, so he laughed. And so I feel like to your point, right, there's a lot of room to grow in efficiency, but I'm not sure if there's a lot of room for intellectual growth
Yeah,
on the causalities. So I'm big on causality as well, and I don't feel like the tech industry cares as long as like something improves or comes out of it. But it's an interesting state. And I guess I'll ask you an even more interesting question, I guess, for many of the listeners of if you were a student now, what would you study to go into this field? Because I don't, there's not a lot of like degrees set up, right? That's like specialized on it. And it's so new. What path
yeah,
would you take to educationally prepare for this?
yeah. I would definitely. So obviously, when you are a student, you want to maximize your ability to have a job in the future, right? And so, for example, I would definitely not do coding just for the sake of coding, like being a CS, having a CS degree, computer science degree. I think like you should definitely, as a student, focus on having AI like engineering skills, like understanding models, building them, because I think this there will be a big demand on scientists, and like it's rare to see someone good at science and good at something else, like let's say um, like interpretability or like computer science. So I think being able to mix the AI engineering skill with something else would be very helpful.
It's a hard question I think to answer as I work with a lot of universities, and the question is like, how do we teach it? How do we add it? And I think kind of as an industry, we're still exploring too. So it's trying to figure out how to blend, yeah, traditional
Yeah,
computer science or quant finance, and then bring in, you know, do we categorize it as tech and computer science, or do we categorize it as like more of a math? Because it's a field of studies of how the actual algorithms work and kind of that process there. So definitely good advice to kind of at
yeah.
least try to blend it with some other skill.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's like especially in 2025, right, where things are moving fast. Yeah, it's kind of hard to solve this problem, but I think something is sure, which is like if you should not like having a skill that is easily replaceable by AI, right? If your for example your skill is mainly writing code, then you have a problem, right? Because you essentially betting against AI, because these AI tools will be able to code very much better in the near future. So I think just being a good coder is no longer necessary. So no longer enough. You have to do something else on top of it.
So where do you think the finance community, I guess, from your perspective, should adapt to this more? Are there any specific areas you think it excels well at that maybe finance firms can get a small win? Or do you think there's like a just an overall coverage of how they should approach adapting AI or kind of going through that exploration process?
Yeah, I think like they should be very aggressive in their adoption of AI. And so I think most of the firms they are just using it for the sake of saying, "Hey, we use AI." But then when you see what they're doing, it's only used for very like low ceiling type of stuff, like summarizing reports, all of that. I think if they are able to actually implement AI in the actual decision making, that would be very, very good. And obviously, it requires investment, infrastructure, and obviously also a big new adoption of technology, right? So I think that's probably the number one problem. Like being, I would say, more humble, like, and understand that these models could actually help them make better decisions. Yeah.
And so where do you think the finance industry will be or the tech industry will be in the next like 10 years with some of these technologies?
So I think what would happen probably is like having a company like OpenAI or Google opening a hedge fund, you know. I think that would be my bet. Like or like I mean we're talking about the financial sector, like you could even see like these companies opening a law firm, right? Like an AI scientist opening a law firm because they think like they could build models that doing law better than the lawyers, right? So I think that's what's going to happen to the financial sector as well. As these models are getting better, then uh, like obviously like the human part of it will be automated. The technology is getting better and better. So I think if they tomorrow like Google or OpenAI say, hey, we're going to open a hedge fund, then they should be very, very worried, you know.
Do you ever think the LLMs will be able to compete with quants? I'm very reluctant to say yes on this. I don't think there's enough actual intelligence in any of the computers, but perhaps you have a different view given the work you're working on.
I mean, like you have like already LLMs scoring gold medals at international math Olympiads.
Hmm.
So and not all the quants have a gold medal, right, at the international math Olympiad. So ultimately, these models will be very competitive and will be able to even replace the quants. You know, I think that's something that definitely happen in the future. Yeah, especially if they solve the reasoning aspect well, they have models that are able to reason. Then I think it's pretty much game over. Like they could automate pretty much everything they want. You know, especially even the quants. You know, yeah.
Did you know Jim Simmons does not have a gold medal in math Olympiads?
I know. Yeah, yeah. He said that he's like a slow thinker, right? He doesn't want to have the pressure time to solve it. No, definitely. I think that's the point. I think that's very good what you just said. But obviously not all the quants have his level of thinking, right? So yeah.
Yeah, I would just challenge it. I would like to see someone in tech rival some of the top quants when it comes to math and theory. I'm sure there's obviously people in that space,
Yeah.
but I would say the information available to make those sort of decisions, even in a learning space, are very limited. So I'd find it hard for those LLMs to compete with it. But it'll be interesting to see in the next 5, 10 years as we start to advance and automate more of it, where the trajectory is going to be heading. I was just going to wrap up with one final question. I guess for the final question
Yeah.
here, who is the target audience for Saber? Like, who should reach out to you guys if they're saying, "Hey, we want to get into AI, we need some help." I mean, what's your target audience, and who should kind of reach out to you guys?
Yeah, so I would say like any person making decisions in a company, whether it's like in the financial sector or other sectors like healthcare, PE, VC, anyone making decisions could reach out to us. Yeah, we're basically working on solving generic decision making, and also we working on supporting with the infrastructure of being able to make these decisions. So anyone making decisions, repetitive decisions, important decisions, right? Like should I take this deal or should I invest in this? Should I do that? That they should definitely reach out to us. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for coming on the channel. I really enjoyed the conversation and chatting back and forth about AI and your journey into the quant finance space and off into tech.
Yeah, thank you so much. Like I rarely have these type of discussions. I think that was very interesting. And yeah, thank you so much for inviting me and asking these questions. Very, very interesting. Hopefully, your audience would find interesting. Thank you.